Hi, I'm CJ and I'm the owner of RepairGuitar.com, located down here in Freehold, New Jersey. This is Ernesto Hernandez. There is nothing that Ernesto cannot do. And today he's going to be talking about setting up a Floyd Rose style guitar and all the different things that can go wrong, things to look for, and mistakes not to make when you're setting up your Floyd Rose.
Today we're going to be talking about general maintenance on a Floyd guitar. Now I have a lot of customers that come in and they have issues with the Floyd because they don't really understand the way that the system works. The system essentially works as an equilibrium. So you have the string tension, and then in the back of the guitar here, there's springs. Now in the back spring cavity, basically what those springs do is counteract the tension of the strings. Now a lot of people have problems with their guitar because what will happen is they'll get the guitar, and let's say the guitar is set up for 9-gauge strings from the factory. This system is set up for those strings. Now let's say they want to change the tuning. You know, they want to maybe use an alternate tuning like a drop tuning, or a you know, they want to use a thicker string, things like that, and they'll put the thicker string on, and then the bridge will go way up in the air and the thing won't stay in tune. They'll have kind of problems with it. And a lot of the time they'll come in and then I'll explain the system and how essentially it works, and they'll say, oh, okay, that makes sense. So a lot of people, you know, first-time guitar buyers or first-time buyers of guitars with floating bridges have issues is simply because of the way that the system functions, and they're not really, you know, educated on how that functions. So I'm opening up the back cavity. We're taking the plate off. Now in the back you're going to see springs and a claw. This is the claw. It has 2 screws. And essentially what these screws do is you can tighten or loosen these to actually loosen or tighten the tension. So this guitar is set up from the factory. You will see the bridge will have a level surface. Generally this bridge is going to be level to the top of the guitar. That's what you're looking for to make sure that the bridge is set correctly. Now what you can do when you're changing strings, which a lot of people do, is you can basically immobilize this bridge. So one thing you can do that I like to do is get like the pink rubber erasers, and you can actually insert it down in here, and that'll keep the bridge from sinking all the way in. Because what will happen is you loosen all the string tension, then you got the springs pulling down on the bridge. They're going to pull it down, and then they're basically going to, it's going to make it more difficult to retune the instrument when you put new strings on, because you'll have to tune them all and then go back and tune them all again, and essentially keep tuning it until you slowly pull the tension of the bridge up. So what I like to do, a couple things you can do, is you actually take this plate right here, and you can actually set it right underneath this, and that'll actually keep it from moving. Or like I said, you could get a wooden block. I have some blocks at my shop that I use generally. And the other thing you could use is like an eraser. So once I have this immobilized, I'm going to take all the strings off of the instrument. So we'll loosen the strings. It's also good to have your guitar sitting on a surface that's not going to move, because I'm hands-free right now. A lot of people fumble with the guitar and then they're trying to hold on to it and restring it. Best area to do it is like clean off a surface, lay it down, if anything get a neck rest for it like this, so you're nice stable surface, you know, to work on, so you're hands-free, because you definitely need all your hands when you're working on this guitar, or any guitar. It just makes it more easy when you're changing the strings. So loosen the strings slightly, cut the strings in the middle. Now the other thing with Floyds that I find that people don't really understand is they'll try to, everything on a Floyd's going to be metric wrenches. So you're really, the main wrenches you're going to see are a 3mm wrench and a 2.5mm wrench. Now these adjustments down here are going to be 3mm. The nut locking are going to be 3mm, and then the screws here for the saddles that hold the saddles in place so you can intonate each saddle are going to be a 2.5mm. So basically I just loosen these screws in the back, and essentially what this is doing is it's taking tension off of the locking clamps inside of the saddles, which hold the strings in place. Now when you are installing new strings, you will have a pair of cutters, and you actually cut off the ball ends so that you have, you know, an end that doesn't have a ball on it. The balls are only used for, you know, other electric guitars, because it's a double locking system. It locks here and it locks here, so you don't need the ball end because it locks by a clamp. So now basically, once I got the strings off, one thing I'm going to inspect is the posts here. Now a lot of the time these posts will wear, and if you have any wear, that can basically make the guitar not stay in tune as well, because the the bridge won't return back to the zeroed position where it's in tune. It'll have, you know, a burr there, and it'll be kicked up or down a little bit, and your guitar won't stay in tune. So you want to make sure that these posts are nice and clean. If they're not, definitely, you know, if you notice them tilting in, or if you notice a lot of wear in these points, I would definitely bring it in either to me or your local guitar repair guitar facility that you can look up on repairguitar.com. And we can take care of that by replacing the studs or even maybe upgrading the bridges. The higher quality bridges are made with a higher quality metal so that they're not going to wear as quickly. So first thing I do is make sure everything's tight. Tuning keys down here. This is always going to be a 10mm nut driver. You can use a socket set, or you could just buy yourself a 10mm wrench. It's pretty much going to fit for pretty much all electric guitars and acoustic guitars, except for Spurzels. Those are like, I think they're like a 7/16. Yeah, 7/16 wrench. So these are tight. Make sure all the screws on everything is tight. I always check that. Jack's tight. I mean, this is a new guitar, so everything's going to be tight. The other thing to check is you want to check and make sure all these nuts right here are tight, because if not, what can happen is those saddles can move forward and then your whole guitar goes out of tune. So I'm just going to check these, make sure they're all tight. They're actually a little bit loose. Not bad. All right, those are tight. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to oil and condition the board. Now I use a 4/0 steel wool, which is going to be the finest grade steel wool. And then we have a special blend here at repairguitar.com that we generate specifically for oiling fingerboards. Now we don't sell this mixture, but you can use, you know, we use it on all our guitars. You could use a lemon oil, or feed and wax is good, things like that. So basically just put a little bit on the steel wool, and then we're going to come in here. This is going to condition the board. Also, we're going to be polishing the frets, because when you have a nice polished fret, it's going to, especially on an electric guitar, because you have, you know, unwound strings, it's going to feel a lot smoother when you're bending and playing. And then once I get the oil in there, I polish the frets. Board's oiled. Come in here and just wipe it down. All right, that's looking good, nice and polished, nice and smooth. You know that you're, because the reason we oil this board is because this is exposed wood. The rest of the guitar's finished. Even the back of the neck here is going to have a satin finish or a full gloss finish. So that's going to seal in the wood, and it's not going to really be affected by climate change. But the fretboard on rosewood and ebony boards is an open wood. There's nothing on it. It's wood itself. Now on the maple boards, they put a finish on them. So, you know, those you don't have to oil if it's a glossy finish. But if it's an exposed wood, you know, I would definitely oil that. Now, you don't want to do it too much. Most people do it when they change the strings. You might not have to do it every time. So I got everything tight. I got the board oiled. I got the frets polished. I got all the hardware where it needs to be. I'm going to come in with some guitar polish and just polish the instrument, especially the spots that you're going to, you know, that are going to be covered up when you have the strings on it. Polishing that out, and you can use any kind of polish. It's good to go. Alright. So now we're going to go into installing the strings. Got my strings here. Open them up. Now generally Floyd style guitars or floating bridge style guitars have a longer scale length, like a Fender scale length, like a 25/5 scale length. And they generally from the factory will come with 9-gauge strings, 9 to 42. So if you like the way it feels in place from the factory, stay with that. Also, if your instrument's adjusted for those strings. Now, if you get the instrument and you say, hey, I want to have this in drop D and I want to have it with 10 to 52 strings, you're definitely going to want to bring that instrument in to your local repair guitar facility and have them adjust it. Now, once it's adjusted and the bridge is adjusted, the neck's adjusted, everything's gonna be adjusted, you change the strings, it's gonna be that much easier and you're not gonna have any problems. So basically what I do is cut the ball ends off. You see I cut it off, so we just have the plain string. I come in down here, string goes into the slot there, and then we're just gonna tighten it down. Now remember, this is a 3mm wrench. I have a lot of people that come in and they use the standard wrenches, and they strip out the parts and have to replace the parts. So just remember, it's always going to be metric. So we'll cut that ball end off, toss that aside, come over here, put this in, tighten that down, get all the strings on. Now the other thing too that I find that people do is they over tighten these. You can't over tighten them, you just want them snug. You can see that I'm not cranking down on it. I'm just getting it nice and snug. I've seen people crank down on them. They can break them. I've seen these screws just shear right off. I've seen them break the blocks inside. And you really don't need a whole lot to hold it in place. You just need, enough pressure to just hold that string. And you'd be surprised, it doesn't take too much to hold them in place. That tight. Next string. Cut off the ball end. Take that down. Alright, the last string. That off. Come down here and clamp them in. Now on a guitar that's not a Floyd, generally you'll keep the ball ends on and they'll feed up through the bridge in the back, or sometimes they feed this way. If it's a Les Paul with a tailpiece, you put them all. I would put all the strings in the tailpiece. I always put all the strings on first before I start winding them. Then I set them aside.